Every now and then we have a client that just completely gets the strategy. Now, we recently worked with Tom from Sydney. Hey mate, how are you? Can't wait to go out with you on the boat and have a couple of beers later this year when we can get back down there. But this site is absolutely epic. So Tom has bought a beautiful home in great condition, completely renovated in a beautiful suburb of Brisbane. Nice big home at the front that's currently renting for $475 a week. And then he split up the backyard, created a beautiful big living space or backyard for the home. And then we've got this gorgeous little granny flat, which he's now getting an extra $325 a week on. So combined return of over $800 a week, incredible location, long-term potential for growth, and great timing buying at the bottom of a 12-year low. So in today's video, I wanted to do a bit of a walkthrough, show you the makeup of the site, show you the beautiful new granny flat that he's built, and just show you how achievable this strategy is in the current market. Come take a look. So what I love about this site is because it's such a big block with such a wide frontage, we're able to maintain such a large backyard. As you can see, Tom spent a little bit of extra money putting in beautiful colorbond fencing and fully fencing the backyard. As you can see on the balcony, there's a couple of dogs there, which means a family can live here confidently, have their own space. But then we've got this nice little backyard for the granny flat as well. Now, what I love about this site, and if you have a look at this, basically it's got a beautiful big backyard for the front home and then a nice little backyard at the back here. And we've found from doing this a number of times here in Brisbane that is what the marketplace wants. It means you can rent the front home easily, you can rent the granny flat easily, and everybody's got their own space, their own entries, their own laundries, their own backyards, their own letterboxes, their own accesses. So it feels like two homes, and therefore we can get the most premium rent possible. Now, as you can see, we've got a huge yard space for the granny flat, completely self-contained, completely private from the front home. What I love about Tom is he decided to invest a tiny bit more in creating a better quality product. So put some privacy screens along the fencing to create a bit more perspective. He's also spent about an extra $800 putting in some extra landscaping here. So as you can see, he's got some beautiful little pots that people can grow their own herbs in. He's got this cool little decked area that he's just put down over the grass, which people can also set up a nice little outdoor entertaining area. And then he's got the deck with the granny flat too. So spending that extra $800, while it doesn't seem like much, has actually enabled this place to rent out for $325 a week instead of maybe $290 a week, which is absolutely awesome and a great return on his investment. Really what you want to be looking for is nice drivable or walkable side access that you can put a nice path in. You want nice big separation so the front home is further down towards the front of the block, meaning that you can section off that nice big backyard for the front home. And then you want the granny flat pushed deeper on the block towards the back of the block on one side, with a little bit of yard space either to the side of the granny flat or at the back of the granny flat. And I think after doing this a bunch of times in Sydney, the Sunshine Coast, the Central Coast, and now Brisbane, we've really got a formula that's working, that the market's liking, that the valuers at the banks are starting to get their heads around. We've got another client who's working in London at the moment with his partner that sent us an email, and his house and granny flat just got valued for dollar exactly what he paid for it, which is beautiful. Now, what we've struggled with when finding the ideal granny flat site and building one in Brisbane and in Sydney before this is just getting the banks to value them up properly. But as a result of a few of them selling recently, we're starting to see that they're either valuing it dollar for dollar what people paid for them for, or actually some of them are starting to sell for a premium. So I love this. I think he's absolutely nailed this site. It's a really good example of best practice. If you can afford to buy a good quality area with a good quality house in a good quality street, and then you have a home that is completely livable with its own backyard, and then you actually spend that tiny bit more building a really high quality granny flat, or you partner with someone like us that can get you a wholesale rate on the granny flat, and you make sure the granny flat has its own yard space as well, then you're ticking so many of the boxes around that timing, capital growth, long-term potential for cash flow as well. I love this strategy. I'm personally at the moment finishing one up the road, or started one up the road, which will finish, fingers crossed, before Christmas. And I'm working through the motions at the moment with the private certifier to start a second one of these closer to the city later this year. So love this strategy, love cash flow and growth, and I think this is an ideal example of a perfect site. Cheers, Tom. So we've just left the last site where you saw a beautiful home with a beautifully completed granny flat on it. What I thought I'd do now is show you through a site that we've just picked up, we're thinking of building a granny flat on in the future, and just wanted to show you what the ideal site looks like before there's actually a granny flat, fencing and everything you saw on the last one. So what we've got here is another really solid brick and tile home in a great position, close to the city with potential for that capital growth, but through the granny flat, very strong potential for cash flow as well. What you'll see here as we walk through is a really, really nice site with multiple options. What we're thinking about doing here is getting rid of the shed and then putting the granny flat in the backyard quarter of this property. So then the front home has a beautiful big yard space as well. Like we said before on the previous site, what we want to maintain is the integrity of the front home, so we can keep the rent return as high as possible on that one, and then also keep them as separated as possible to create the maximum rent return on the back one. So we'll put some fencing in here, basically between the home, creating that large space there, and then the granny flat will have its privacy as well. Now what's beautiful about this site is on both sides of the property there's drivable side access, so if our client in the future ever wanted to put some extra car accommodation in, or some sheds in, or some extra driveways in, there's the opportunity to do that. We're now out the front of the property. Now when I'm looking for the ideal granny flat site, I'm looking for a nice wide frontage. As you can see with this one, it's absolutely huge. It's probably almost 20 meters actually. It's absolutely massive. I'm also looking for the house well positioned close to the front of the block to create that large backyard space. So when we do create the granny flat product out the back, there's still that beautiful large backyard. Like I said before, I love the fact that there's such large drivable side accesses down both properties. You know, if the house isn't on at the front of the block when you're looking to do this yourself, then it's probably not the right property, because the last thing you want is to jeopardize the rentability of the front home by having no yard space. What we have done when the house has been in the middle of the block before is then fully fenced off the front yard to create livable space. But just the Australian way is to chuck the kids in the backyard and to feel secure and safe that way. So this is a much, much better design. Now, what's interesting about this site is there's multiple ways to do the granny flat. You could do it down the bottom left-hand side of the property or the bottom right. I personally think it would be better to get rid of the shed down there and to do it down there to create a fuller backyard. But again, there's always more than one way to do this stuff. So hope you've enjoyed this little tour, and I hope it's made a bit clearer in terms of what you're looking for. In terms of the ideal site size, I'm always looking for at least 600 square meters, but obviously the bigger the better for the land to create more functional space for both properties.